which is going to be about distance and the coordinate plane. Now, to find the distance in the coordinate plane, there's technically two ways you can do it. One way is that you can, look at your line in the coordinate plane. Whilst we can basically, what we can do is that we can draw out these lines. If you guys remember what we did in the last unit, on the sides of my parallelograms and stuff, I draw these lines that extend it out, and it'll make a triangle. Now, what you can do to figure out this missing side here is that on the graph, you can just count how much was the side of this part. I'm just going to call it A. How much the side of this part, I can call it B. And then I can just use A squared plus B squared equals C squared to figure out my length right here. This is what we have done in the last unit. Now, here's a new method that you're going to know. It's called the distance formula. Because sometimes you will not be given a graph and you can't just, count like this. So this is when you use the distance formula, and this is the formula that you will have to remember when you get to Algebra 2 and so on. So the distance formula is saying the distance between my 2 points. Well, my first point, I just call, for my first point, point 1, as x, it's called x1, and then its y is called y1. For my second point, it's going to be called x2 and y2. Now it says that my distance between my 2 points is going to be the square root of the difference of my x's square plus the differences of my y square. And all of this being square rooted will be my total distance. So let's see, how does this work? Now, there are different ways teachers teach this, but I'm going to teach you both ways just to see which way you like it. Now, some people just tells you, well, let me just go ahead and label this as x1, y1. That's my first point. This as x2, y2. That's my second point. Then I'm just going to plug in everything straight to the formula. So distance equals the square root of, well, I do x2 minus x1. So x2 is 2, x1 is 7. I square root it, just like how in the not square root it, square it, just like how I have in the formula. And then I do plus the parentheses, and I do y2, which is -4, minus y1, which is 5, and then I square it. Then I just simplify everything out. And this will give us -5 squared plus -9 squared. If you put this into the calculator, the value you get here will be the square root of 106. Now, when you round it to the nearest tenth, you get 10.3. Now, this is one way you can approach this question, but there's another way you can approach the question, which is that, well, technically, if you look at the formula, part 1 here just says, well, you're just trying to find the difference of x, and then you square it, right? Part 2 here is same thing. You find the difference of y, and then you square it. So we don't have, so if I do it my way, the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to still do the same thing. Distance equals square root parentheses. Now in the first parentheses, I'll put the difference of my x value. Well, the difference between 7 and 2 is what? It's 5. So I'm going to put 5 squared. And I plus now the distance of my y values. Well, the difference between 5 and -4, or the distance in between it, will be 9. So it'll be 9 squared. Now, if you go ahead and solve this into your calculator, you will still get the same value, which is 106. Depending on what way you like it, so method 1, you're just, labeling x1, x2, y1, y2, and you just plug in everything straight to the formula. Or you can do it my way, which is just remembering that the distance formula is just a square root of, the difference between my x squared plus the difference of my y squared. Okay? Whatever method you would like. Or whenever you're given a picture like this, you can also use, the Pythagorean theorem. But I want you guys to start to learn how to use the distance formula for right now. Because sometimes, like this question B here, you're not giving a picture, so you have to know use your distance formula anyways. Now, let's do question B. Now it says, what's the distance between this point and this point? And then you're going to round it to the nearest tenth. Now, for now, I will just do it my way, which is I'm going to just write down D equals. Now, in my first blank here, I'll put the difference between my x values. So what's the difference between -7 and 4? Well, the difference of -7 and 4, which is basically -7 minus 4, will be 11. Or, if you don't think about negative sign, it's -11. But you're thinking about the distance or the difference between them. On the graph, they're technically only 11 away. So I'm thinking about the distance or the difference between them was only 11 units. So this is why I only put 11. Now, it does not matter whether you put 11 or negative 11 because it will end up being square and the value will be the same. Now, next one. Now, we're going to find what's the difference between 5 and negative 3. Well, the difference or the distance between 5 and negative 3 will be 8. And then we will just simplify. Now, this becomes D equals the square root of 11 will be 121. And then the square root of the square root of 8 squared will be 64. Now, if you go ahead and simplify this, your value here will be D equals 185. And if you go ahead and put in the calculator, your value rounded to the nearest 10 place will be 13.6. Moving on to the question C. Now it says, what's the distance between, well, the point R and this point right here? Well, it's almost the exact same thing. Let me write my distance formula. Now, in my first blank here, I had to put what's my difference between my x's. What's the difference or the distance between 0 and 17? Well, it's going to be just 17, right? Now, next one, what's the difference or the distance between 44 and negative 5? Well, it's going to be 49. You can either do this in your brain or you can just put in a calculator, 44 minus negative 5. It will give you the same thing. Then you will calculate this in your calculator, your value here when you round it to the nearest 10th place after you square root everything will be 51.9. Moving on. Now, question A here, it says Sarah wants to put some she wants to put some pink ribbon around the edge of a banner. The figure given shows the shape of the banner in centimeters. How much ribbon was needed? Now, on this question, it's basically asking us to find the perimeter here. So we're asking to find the perimeter. Okay? Now, looking at this question, since there's a graph, on some of these sides, it's actually easy to find because we just have to count. So for this side right here, we just have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is 12 right here. Now, on the other side, it will be just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. On this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Now, to figure out my other slanted side, there's two ways you can do it. You can either use the distance formula or you can use the Pythagorean theorem. Let me first use the distance formula. If I use the distance formula to figure out my distance here, let me first write my 2 points, negative 5 and 3, and 7 and negative 2. Okay, my D equals. Now, in the first blank, I will put the difference between my x values, which is 7 and negative 5. Now, the distance between 7 and negative 5 is 12. Now, for my second blank here, I'll put the distance or the difference between 3 and negative 2, which in this case here will be 5. Now, if you go ahead and do this, your value here at the end will be the square root of 144 plus, because 12 squared is 144, plus 25, because 5 squared is 25. It will give you 169. Now, if you go ahead and simplify this into a calculator, your value here for this side will be 13. Now, this is how you do it to the Pythagorean theorem. But let's see how, this is how you do it through the distance formula. Now, let's use the Pythagorean theorem. Now, for the Pythagorean theorem, you're going to take these 2 points, you're going to extend it out to draw a triangle. Okay? Now, this side, you'll see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On this side, we see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then, to figure out my missing side right there, the slanted side, I will just do 12 squared plus 5 squared equals my c squared, which it will give me 169 equals c squared. And to find my c, I'll ending up square root both sides. And my c in this case here will just be 13. So whatever method you would like to do, it will give you the exact same answer. Now, once we know this size 13, to figure out my answer, how much banner was needed, I will just have to add everything up. I have to do 12 plus 9 plus 13 plus 4. Once I add all these together, my answer for how much ribbon that was needed will be 38 centimeters. Okay. Moving on to question B. The shape of Olivia's backyard is shown below in feet. She wants to use bug repellent around the perimeter of her backyard. Now, how many bags of repellent will she need if each bag covers 3 feet? Now, let me first figure out how many feet, and then I figure out how many bags that she needs. Now, to figure out how many feet, again, we're still trying to find the perimeter. On the easy sides, let's just count, okay? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the other side here, well, there's multiple ways you can do it. One way is that you can use the Pythagorean theorem, which is what I'm going to use right here. So on this triangle that we have right here, this side is 2 and the other side is 2. So I do 2 square plus 2 square equals my c square. This will give me a equals c square. And this means my c here is just the square root of a. Now if you go ahead and simplify this by putting your calculator, your c will actually be equal to about 2.8. Now, let me go ahead and write this as 2.8. Now we have all the perimeter, information that we need. All we have to do is just add 6 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2.8. That'll be 6 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2.8. This means the total amount of distance I have to cover in feet will be 14.8. And she asked, well, how many bags she needed if each bag will cover 3 feet. So let's go ahead and divide 14.8 by 3. If I go ahead and do this, it will give me 4.93, about 4.93 if I round it to the nearest hundredths place. This means I will need about 4.93 bags. However, there's not like 0.93 bags. I'm just gonna have to round up so I have enough. So I'll just have to take 5 bags. And 5 bags will be my answer of how much that is needed. Now for question C here, this is gonna be a multi-step one though. Now, it says the pilot takes off for Augusta and files to, well, let me just draw on the picture. We first started right here. Let me put in blue. We first started right here. Then we filed to this place to pick up a passenger. Then we dropped them off in Brookline. And we filed back to Augusta. Now it's saying how much did the pilot travel in the nearest miles. Now realize that on this one, none of the sides you can just count it because all the sides are slanted. It's not straight horizontal or vertical. So what we have to do in this case is that we either have to use 3 times Pythagorean theorem on all 3 sides, or we have to use 3 times the distance formula. So in this case, I'm just going to do distance formula. So I'm going to first write down all the ordered pairs for all the points I have, okay? So I'm going to first, this order pair here is 0, 0. This order pair here is a, 2. This order pair is going to be 4, 5, okay? And the reason this is a 4, 5 because between 4 and 8 here, this is 6. However, this point was in between 4 and 6, so this is why this is 4, 5. Now, once we have this written down, we have to, find the distance between each of these sides. So let me first find the distance between this side right here. I'm going to label in purple. Let's find the distance between this side first. I'm just going to, use purple so we can know which one I'm talking about. So to find the distance between those 2 points that's in purple, I'm going to first, in my first blank, I'm going to put the difference between my x. The difference between my x here, or the difference between 4 and 0 here, is going to be 4. I'm going to square it. Then I do my difference between my y here, which is going to be this number and this number. Well, the difference is going to be 5. So it's going to be 5 squared. Now, if I go ahead and simplify this into the calculator, I will get the square root of 41. Rounded to the nearest 10th place, it'll be 6.4. Now, this means that this distance right here will be 6.4. Now, I do the same thing with my other side. Now, let me do my red right here. Now, same thing. Let me go ahead and find the difference between their x first. Well, the difference between a and 0 is just going to be 8. So it's going to be 8 squared. The difference between 0 and 2 is just 2. So it's going to be 2 squared. This will give me, after you put in the calculator, it'll be square root of 68, or round it to the nearest 10th place will be 8.2. Last one, let's go ahead and do this yellow side. Oops. So my difference, let me put in orange for the work. My difference between my x here, 4, and a here is just going to be 4. My difference between my y here, which is 5 and 2, will be 3. If I put this into the calculator and simplify it, it'll give me the square root of 25, or the answer is 5. Now the total distance, I will just add everything up. I'll just do 6.4 plus 8.2 plus 5. If I add all them together, I will end up getting 19.6. However, your question asks you to round it to the nearest mile, so my answer here will be 20 miles. And that's going to be the end of this video. Please let me know if you have any questions.